Coming to you live from Denver, Colorado, the Mile High City. I'm Chris Pardo. Thank you very, very much for listening. Got a lot to talk about today. College football starting up tonight again. Actually started Saturday. We know that, but that was just 3 games. We got some games on tap for tonight. We got some games coming up tomorrow. And of course on Saturday as well. We're going to keep you up to date on it. We're going to take a close look at 3 of the games and kind of give you an idea as to which direction our friends, the professional bettors, are going. Kind of give you an idea as to what's going on there. And as far as baseball is concerned, we have one game to take a look at. And not going to take a look at, we're just going to tell you who it is, like we mentioned to you yesterday, with the college season on tap right now, then pro season coming up a few days later. Not much time to really talk in depth about any of the baseball selections, but we're going to give you the selections that are still being made by the pros. Today we only happen to have one, so we'll take care of that real quickly. And then, of course, we're going to be talking about college football, about the games for tonight and tomorrow. Yes, sir, because not only that, but Chris Andrews, we got a report from Chris, and I'll tell you, yesterday we spent a good part of the show talking about lines and how they're developed. Well, let me tell you something. The report I have for you today that comes from Chris kind of will give you an idea of what these guys go through on a daily basis more than once, because you're talking about a ton of college football games. You have 15, 16 NFL games you got to talk about, too, come up with lines for. And it is just one person that does all of it. Of course, obviously, they have staff members that take care of the SEC, the Big Ten, the Pac-12, things of that nature. But then it really comes down to Chris, who has to make the final decisions on some of these situations once they're presented to him. That's why they got to be very careful, because in college football, that's where they really can make a little mistake. And if you can catch that mistake, you'll have a better understanding of what's going on. But then again, that's what we're going to talk about big time today. I want to make sure that you fully understand how that happens. And it's great that this report came through today, because it'll really show you how a line develops and how it happens, Anyway, thanks for listening. You're coming to you live. We're right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. We're also podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms, such as Apple, Spotify, just about most of them. Let me put it that way. I don't want to every day go into all the various systems that we're involved in. But of course, we're very easy to listen to any time of the day or night. Of course, Monday through Friday, we are here 1 o'clock Eastern time. And of course, Saturday and Sunday, we're here at 11 a.m. Eastern time. We drop it a couple hours, another hour or two, because we want to make sure that you get all the information you need to make those early college and NFL bets on Saturday and Sunday. So that's the story there. And as usual, the first thing we do before we get involved in talking about what's going to be happening today or tonight in college football and in baseball, we first want to see what happened yesterday, kind of bring your results up to date and see how it happened. So in Major League Baseball, the underdogs, hey, they barked yesterday, 8-6. The first day of September, the Red Sox a plus 104, snapping the Rays' 9-game winning streak. So if you're into that winning-losing scenario, now you've got Boston coming into that category as a situation to play. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Meanwhile, after the favorites went at a little over 65% in August, the favorites, of course, they do lead over the entire season at almost 60%. The unders went 8-6 yesterday. They increased their lead to 50.3%. Now, you understand, you have so many games that we've been talking about so far that when you see a change, it's going to be a 0.1%, 0.4, 0.5. It's not big numbers, because altogether you had 951 unders 939 overs. So you talk about 1,800 scenarios, 1,900 maybe, even if you add all the other ones in as well, all the pushes as well. So that's why yesterday was 50.2, today it's 50.3. But it's still, when you get that many numbers, that high, the change is very, very minimal, although it is really big for that particular day. So that's the story as far as yesterday was concerned. And yesterday we did have 3 plays that the pros had made selections on. I'm going to bring you up to date as to how that did yesterday. We had 3 plays. We had 2 losers and 1 winner. Lost on the Houston-Seattle game. The pros had Houston. Lost on the Red Sox-Rays game because they had the Rays. But we did win on the Yankees and the Royals. That was a winner. So we had 3 plays, 2 winners. So that comes out to be 33%. Now, today, because there's only one game on tap we're talking about, and that's the Red Sox and the Rays. The pros are on the Red Sox in this particular game. And if you're into the winning-losing streaks, the swagger theory comes into play on this game as well, because the Red Sox are now, because they beat the Rays, who were on a 9-game winning streak, okay? That came to an end yesterday. And generally what happens, as we call it, the swagger theory, is that when a team comes off of a winning streak and loses a game, historically, they do come back and they lose their next game as well. So that's the story there. We're just bringing it to your attention. It's up to you to decide which way you want to go with it. That's totally up to you. So we're going to be talking about college football coming up tonight. 3 games we're going to look at: Boise State, Central Florida; East Carolina against App State; Ohio State against Minnesota. Those are the games we're going to take a close look at, do a quick analysis, see which direction the line movement is going in those games. And of course, that'll tell us in which direction the professional bettors are going as well. So just a reminder, we do take 3 breaks in the show. Each break is of a 1-minute duration. So if that's the case, we will be back in 60 seconds. And welcome back. Here you go. We're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo, coming to you live from the Mile High City, Denver, Colorado. Yes, we are on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms. You could be listening to us on Apple or Google or possibly even Specker. So many, many more. iHeartRadio. You can find us. It's very, very simple. So let's take a look at 3 college football games on tap for today. It's week 1 of the 2021 college football regular season. So let's see a few of the key games on tap and see who's getting a good portion of the action so far. So to start with, at 7 o'clock Eastern time, you got Boise State playing Central Florida. Now, this is a non-conference game. It got a pair of teams, head coaches making their debut, their first season on both situations. Gus Malzahn now calls the shots at UCF, And Andy Avalos, the former Oregon defensive coordinator, is now the head man over there at Boise State. Boise State went 5-2 in last year's pandemic season, which was kind of shortened because of the pandemic. UCF went 6-4 before losing to BYU 49-23 down there in the Boca Raton Bowl. Now, tonight's line opened with Central Florida, listed as a 4-point home favorite. Now, the pro money has really come in on UCAF. They steamed the Knights all the way up from being a 4 to a 6-point favorite. Now, we've also seen some under money coming up on the game, forcing the odds makers to drop those totals from 69.5 down to 68. As far as the weather, they're in Florida. It calls for low in the 80s, 10-mile-per-hour winds. Now, remember, historically, winds of 10 miles per hour or more have gone to the under about 55% over the past 10 years. Okay? Once again, winds of 10 miles per hour or more have gone under in about 55% of the games over the past 10 years. Also, the defenses are ahead of the offenses early in this part of the season. We know that it happens all the time, which makes early season contrarian unders a really smart bet to look at. So Boise State against Central Florida in this particular game, the pros definitely are on Central Florida as a 6-point favorite in this particular game. So that's the story on that game. And then at 7:30, you've got East Carolina against App State. Now, East Carolina, they're coming off a really disappointing 3-6 season last year. In the meantime, App State, well, they went 9-3. They capped off their season with that 56-28 beating of North Texas in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Now, looking at this game, it's going to be played at a neutral location. It's going to be played at Bank of America Stadium here in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's home of the Carolina Panthers, if you remember. So tonight's line opened with App State listed as a 11.5-point favorite. Now, some books opened up as high as 13.5 earlier in the summer before as the first numbers first came out. The public is happy to lay the points with App State. However, the line has fallen from 11.5 to that key number of 10. The key numbers, once again, are 3, 7, and 10. Now, at times, some of the shops have even dropped down to 9.5. What this means is you're seeing a sharp movement and a liability on East Carolina plus the points because they're on a neutral field. Okay, so if you take a look at it, East Carolina plus the points is the play as far as the pros are concerned. They've also targeted the under, dropping the total down from 58.5 down to 55. So those are the first two games we looked at. Once again, Boise State against Central Florida. Okay. And of course, the money in this game is on Central Florida. They are the favorite in this game. At 7:30, also, you have East Carolina against App State. In this game, the pros are on East Carolina because they are the underdog in this particular situation. And one of the reasons for that is because they're playing at a neutral site. They're not playing at home at App State. They're not playing at East Carolina. They're two Carolina teams. They're down in in Charlotte to play at the stadium that the Panthers play in. That's Bank America Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina. So the pros in this game are on East Carolina. We have one more game to take a look at. That's Ohio State against Minnesota. But in the meantime, before we do that, let's take another break. Get that second break out of the way. And when we come back, that's the game we're going to take a look at. We'll be back in the zone in 60 seconds. And welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo. I'm here in Charlotte. No, I'm not in Charlotte anymore. So used to saying it. For many years we were in Charlotte. It's hard to get that out of the system. We're in Denver, Colorado, the Mile High City. That's what they call it right here. The I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. We're talking college football today. The college football season really starting to crank up now. I know we had a couple of games last week. Now we have some games tonight. We'll have some games on Friday and on Saturday. In case you just tuned in, there are two games we already talked about tonight. The 7 o'clock game between Boise State and Central Florida. And in that particular game, the pros are on Central Florida, and they are a 6-point favorite last we looked. Also, East Carolina against App State. In this particular game, the pros are on the underdog. East Carolina, they are the underdog in this game. The pros are leaning in that direction at 9.5. Some people are getting 10. Just all depends on where you are at the time, depending which part of the country you're playing in. And of course, that'll have a lot to do with it. What we're dealing with here are Las Vegas numbers. You have to pick a spot. There's over 25 different states now that do have legalized betting, which you can't go into every one and say this is a consensus of all of them. So what we're doing is saying, hey, this is how it is in Vegas. Vegas is still the mecca. It's still the capital of sports betting in America so far. I know some of the other states like New Jersey, for instance, have really overshadowed them as far as money that's coming in. But of course, you look at the size of the two states, you take a look at the population of Nevada compared to the population of New Jersey, and you can see how and why New Jersey does all of that money much more than even Las Vegas right now. So we do give you the Las Vegas numbers anyway, just to clarify that up. Meanwhile, at 8 o'clock, one more game to look at, Ohio State at Minnesota. Now, this is probably going to be the most heavily bet game of the day, and it's almost a lopsided game of the night as well. You got great value if you're a contrarian-minded bettor, which we are here at the show. Ohio State comes into this game. They're ranked 4th overall. They're coming off a 7-1 season in which they reached the national championship. Then you remember they lost to the Crimson Tide of Alabama 52-24. Now, on the other side, you look at Minnesota. They're looking to come back from that disappointing 3-4 season from last year. The season was shortened again because of the COVID situation. So tonight's game, it's a primetime game, and it opened with Ohio State listed as a 14-point road favorite. Now, the public, you know them, they like them big names. They're hammering the Buckeyes, expecting an easy blowout win and an easy cover. But just hold on a minute, because despite all this lopsided money that's coming in, the tickets that are coming in for Ohio State, we haven't seen the line move, okay? Instead, it stayed at the same or even dropped down a tick to 13.5. This is called a line freeze, and because of the drop to 13.5, it's referred to as a reverse line movement, and it means that a lot of pro money is coming in on Minnesota and taking the points. Now, the Gophers are the top contrarian play of the night. They also have value. They're a buy low home team, unranked. They're an unranked conference dog. They're playing within the conference against a ranked opponent. Now, Pro Action has also hit the under in this game. They dropped that total from 65 down to 62.5. The forecast in Minnesota, well, it calls for temperatures in the low 70s, 10 to 15 mile per hour winds. And now, remember, we said it before, when the wind blows 10 miles per hour or more, and the total drops at least a half a point to the under, The under is roughly 56% over the past 10 years. So this is the contrarian play of the day. Minnesota against Ohio State. Public, very big on Ohio State, but why not? One of the things that the public gets involved in, they love favorites. They play big name teams. They stick with big name players on teams. That's what kind of draws them in. However, this game, the pros, they kind of like Minnesota in this game. It's defenses are usually tougher in the beginning. The unders usually come in this situation. Minnesota, it's a conference game. They're at home. That's very important. So the pros in this game, Minnesota over Ohio State, that's who they like. Once again, going back to the first two games we talked about, Boise State against Central Florida. They like Central Florida with the 6. East Carolina, App State. Once again, they like the underdog in that game as well. Okay. They like East Carolina in that game. And in this game, they like Minnesota as the underdog as well. So those are the three games that are selected by the pros as far as line movement is concerned and things in that direction. But just one other thing before we go any further. We're going to take our final break. We come back, we'll go over Chris's report as far as how he came up with some of these numbers. It's going to be very interesting. And it comes down to the point of what we always say. You have to get into the heads of these guys. You have to think like they do. You have to see, well, what would they do now? And that's the thing that will make you much more successful. There's no doubt about it. So that's the whole story there. So we're looking at situations. We're going to go into those. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our final break. And when we come back, we're going to go in and take a look and find out exactly what the story is there and can bring you up to date as to how line movements happen, why they happen, and how the sports books deal with them. We'll be back in the Sports Zone in just 60 seconds. And welcome back. We're back in the sports wagering zone. Here we go again. Now, once again, just want to let you know we're on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, that's for sure, and on most of your podcast platforms as well. So yesterday, we talked about some emails that I've received from listeners wanting to know how how are the lines set up? How is all that kind of put together? Can we find out more about it? So what we've been doing since the beginning of the football season, because it's only been 1 week so far in college football, kind of looking at Chris Andrews, who's the sportsbook director over at South Point, the sports book in Las Vegas. Okay. He comes out with a report every week and he kind of tells you what he's been doing, what he's gone through. And here's what he has to say about the games for tonight and how he came up with some of these numbers. Very, very interesting. And if you kind of listen to it and kind of get the idea, the concept of how these things happen, you're going to become a much more successful bettor. Now, He says that the sportsbooks got really beat up last week. They were all the favorites came in except, of course, that Nebraska game, and the Cornhuskers' opponent, Illinois, was the only underdog that got a lot of money. So the public loves betting favorites. There's no way for a book to make money when the chalk is cashing 80% of the time. And that's what happened last week. So this week's schedule is huge. There are a lot more games generating two-way action, and sports books will have a real fighting chance this time because you have more games to choose from, okay? When you limit it to 3 games, you better hit them right. So today he says, I'll focus on how the pros and the public have been betting these TV games scheduled for Thursday night. He says he's going to give you a full idea on the weekends as well on Friday. So let's take a look and see how these things happen. So, first of all, he looked at Temple at Rutgers. He says, I opened the game, Rutgers, as a 13.5-point favorite. The pros laid that. And they laid the 14 when he boosted it up to 14. That was his first line move. The pros still came in on it. He's at 14.5 now. He says he can make a case to go to 15, but not yet. The number is high, and he thinks it's very high where it's at. But there you go. He opened it at 13.5. The pros love that number. Boom, in they came. The next thing he did, he bumped it up a half a point. They still came in with more. So we went up to 14.5. They're still coming in. He may go to 15. That kind of gives you an idea of what he's been going through. Now, Boise State and Central Florida, one of the games we talked about earlier, where the pros are on Central Florida. And he says, this is an interesting one. He said, I use this as one of my games of the year all the way back in May. And he opened Central Florida as a 10-point favorite. Now, that got pounded down by the pro money, okay, when he reopened the week 1 board on July the 9th. He went up with UCF, University of Central Florida, okay, as a 4-point favorite. So he was talking 10 back in May. And when he opened up in the first week in July, when it really started getting serious, he opened with Central Florida as a 4-point favorite. The Sharps laid the 4-point. So he went up to 4.5, and then he went up to 5. He says he's at Central Florida at 5.5, although other stores are still at 5. Now, obviously, the South Point is exposed to a middle here, and UCF winning by 5 to 9 points would definitely hurt that particular sports book. So kind of, once again, you see how it happens. But this way on the other end, before we talked about betting on the dog, this time they bet on the favorite. UCF at 4. Pros came in with money, went up to 4.5. Pros still came in with more money. Pros, they went up to 5, and they still came in. Now he's up to 5.5. He may even have to go to 6. Now, East Carolina and App State. Here's another one. He opened App State, 13-point favorite. The pros took the dog in this game. They took the 13 points. And then when he dropped it to 12.5, they came in and took that too. So he dropped it down to 11 from 12.5. And the pros took that again. He says, we're at 10 right now. I'm seeing good two-way action at that price. I should note that during the regular season, the pros often wait to jump on underdogs on the theory that the public will drive the favorite higher. That's a very interesting theory that really works. Now, that's less likely to happen in week 1 when the opening lines are the softest. That's the least informed they'll ever be. Now, if professional bettors believe an opener is wrong, they'll take the dog right away. Pros like East Carolina at 10.5 or more. App State is getting enough support at 10 to create that two-way action that he was talking about. And then in South Florida at NC State, he opened NC State at 18, an 18-point favorite. His first bet was on the dog. So he dropped it to 17.5. Bettors came in, they laid that as well. So it looks like he's going to be dropping it down to 18 because the market's dropping down to 18. Now, he has a feeling that the line will go up before kickoff time as well. And then finally, the Ohio State Minnesota game. Now, this is by far the most heavily bet of the weekday games, the biggest handle by a wide margin. He says he opened Ohio State as a 13-point favorite. They laid 13, so he went up to 13.5. The pros came in, they took that money as well. Now he's at 14. He's writing a tremendous amount of two-way business, which is strong action in both directions. In other words, the public's coming in and supporting the one side, the pros are coming in and taking the other side. Finally, a total to talk about. The under has been a pro play so far. He opened it at 65. They bet under 65. He dropped it to 64.5. They went for that. He dropped it to 64. They came in on that. He dropped it to 63.5. They came in on that. Now, you'll see different numbers at different stores. He says, I have to move based on their action at South Point. He's now at 62.5. Okay. Under betting. That's what's going to happen. And it's going to try to drive some over interest to kind of get some money in on the other side, because that's what they're looking for. Money on both sides. That's the story. So that's the story for the games for tonight. I hope you enjoyed the little vignette we had here talking about Chris Andrews and what he has to go through, which is, again, that's what we talked about yesterday. We got some emails on that. How does it happen? So you see, it's not an exact science. So when somebody says to me that, hey, look at this, the pros, the sports books, they hit it right on the nose. Giants are a 6-point favorite. They win by 6 points. No, they started out as 4, then moved up to 6. You have to see what the opening line is. The line finally is dictated by the amount of money that comes in. So if it shows a line movement from one direction and another, and that just happens to be the final score of the game by that number, it's not because the sports books put it there. It's because the money that came in brought it to that level. That's just something you have to understand. And the more you understand it, the more professional you'll become as far as selecting winners when it comes to sports betting. So that's the story for today. Try to really give you some insight as to what these guys go through. Okay, they do it on a daily basis. This is not just today. They're talking about Friday's games. They're going to be talking about Saturday's games. Okay. And then next week, not only do they have the Friday night and Saturday games, now they have the Sunday NFL games. They're going to have the Monday night game. It just goes on and on. It just goes on and never ends. And this is a daily situation. They deal with this every day. So that's the story. Anyway, thanks again for listening. I just want to cover the 3 games, the college games that are on tap for tonight. Central Florida. They like Central Florida as a 6-point favorite. They love East Carolina as the underdog, and they love Minnesota as the underdog as well. And as far as baseball goes, there's only one game we talked about real quickly, the Red Sox and the Rays. The pros in that particular game are on the Boston Red Sox. And of course, if you have anything to do with betting trends, winning and losing trends, just keep in mind, Tampa Bay lost yesterday to the Red Sox. They lost that game after winning 9 straight games. So now they fall into what is called the swagger theory in this situation. So again, just something to remind you about. This way, if you're into that or you're looking for something to bet on, just something that has been working pretty good over the years. Anyway, that's the story for today, guys. We'll be back again tomorrow. Once again, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. We're here every Monday through Friday. I really hope you have a great day today. It's Thursday. We're getting ready, coming into Friday. The week's almost coming to an end finally. Okay. We'll talk about the games tomorrow night as well. We'll look at Chris's report for the games on Friday. We'll kind of let you know what's going on with that as well. So I hope you have a great day today. And if you're going to be doing any betting on those college games tonight, or baseball, or even on golf, if you're doing that, I hope you're very, very successful at it as well. Take this information we give you, think about it, see if you can implement it with your system that you're using. Because, like we always say, if you have a system that's doing well, don't mess with it. Leave it alone. Give it a little tweak maybe here or there. And perhaps it's the tweaks that we give you that'll help put you over the top. So until tomorrow, once again, 1 o'clock Eastern Time on the I-95 network, I'm Chris Pardo. Have a great Thursday. And like I said, if you're betting, I hope you have a profitable one as well. Goodbye, everybody.